Welcome to the Positioning Show, where we discuss topics related to the practical application of positioning for marketing, sales, and product teams. I'm April Dunford, a consultant, author, and the world's leading expert on positioning for B2B technology companies. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Positioning Show. This edition is brought to you by me and my new book. Did I mention I have a new book out? It's been out for a couple of weeks now. It's called Sales Pitch. I love it so much. It's really great to have it out in the world and just see what people think. I wanted to share a review because it literally made me a little emotional. So the review is, I thought this was a really nice follow-up to Obviously Awesome with some really useful practical guides. The end sales pitch that April describes reminded me a lot of how we did it at Moat. I believe that thoughtful repetition of deck, demo with narrative is what got our product situation to $100 million in ARR and an $850 million exit. That's pretty cool. TLDR, I think April uncovered a real gap that exists in the go-to-market teams of many B2B SaaS companies, the gap where great positioning or messaging gets thrown out the window when sales decides to take the pitch in their own way. I think mostly it's because they don't feel confident in the quality of that pitch and the story, so this is a great framework to build quality and close that gap. Reviews, so great. Anyways, all right, let's get on to today's episode. Today's episode is about trends and how, where, and when we can leverage trends and what we maybe need to watch out for when trends like AI come up. I've been getting a lot of questions about AI lately and whether or not we should be considering repositioning our product because of AI. And so I want to kind of take you on this little journey talking about trends and the way I think about trends because I think it might be useful. First of all, in technology, we often confuse markets and trends. So markets are categories of solutions that you can buy. So CRM is a market, accounting software is a market, sales technology tools and MarTech, these are markets, and there are things inside those markets that you can buy. Trends in technology are things that are happening across markets. They are typically things that you can layer onto a market. They potentially apply to many markets, but they are distinctly different from markets. An example of this might be blockchain. Blockchain is something that can be used in multiple different ways across all kinds of different types of solutions. So it is not a market in itself. It's something that we can apply to solutions in a market. There are other things that are like this, like cloud, for example. I think machine learning and AI falls into this. So there's lots of things that are trends that are not markets. There are lots of markets, and those markets are not trends. These two things are really different. One good way of thinking about it is like this. So, there's this company called Pantone. They're like the color people. Every year they put out a press release and they say, color of the year is whatever. Like this year, the color of the year is Viva Magenta or hot pink if you aren't fancy about how you describe colors. And so they'll announce this and say, okay, the color this year is Viva Magenta. Great. And so the next thing you know, we got pink pants and pink nail polish and pink lipstick, and everybody's going crazy for the pink. So let's say you're a furniture manufacturer and you decide you're going to make a couch in Viva Magenta and put that out. So you are still in the couch business. That hasn't changed, but you have applied a trend on top of your business to make your product seem hip and now and relevant and hot. So in marketing, we can take advantage of trends, but it's fundamentally different from positioning. Positioning is about answering the question, what are we and why pick us over the other guys? Trends, if we layer it on top, sometimes are a very useful way to answer the question, why now? So why does this matter to us at all in marketing? It matters because it matters to customers. So sometimes we'll have a big, relevant, interesting trend. It gets all over the news. Customers are reading about it and they're worried. How is this going to affect my business? Should we actually be thinking about this? And so they start evaluating whether or not they need to have some kind of a strategy around this new technology. And that will impact the way they look at vendors and evaluate vendors when it comes time to purchase a solution. So the question that folks will ask me is, do I need to reposition my product because there is so much noise in the market right now around AI? And I think there's two things that you need to consider. So one is your differentiated value. The other one is, let's see, the hotness of what you are doing. We'll come back to this spicy hotness in a second, but let's talk about differentiated value. So let's say you are a CRM solution and you have some nifty AI that helps your company do a really good job of outbound prospecting, for example. So the value that you can deliver is much more efficient outbound prospecting to increase revenue. That's the value. The addition of AI maybe didn't actually change that value. You were probably doing that before. It just makes that value way better. So your value's the same. If the value is the same, there is no need to reposition around it. Now, you may want to test out whether or not you want to take advantage of AI just to make your stuff seem kind of hot and spicy if your customers are interested in it. So, for example, you might want to test out some messaging with your sales team that says, hey, what we actually have is AI powered outbound prospecting that increases the efficiency of your reps and improves revenue. So you might find that customers get really excited about that because their management team is thinking about their AI strategy and their AI focus for the entire company. So this might work really well. If it does, you might consider weaving that into your messaging on the homepage. You might consider running a particular campaign around that message. But to be very clear, your positioning didn't change. What you did was you layered a spicy bit of a trend on top to help answer the question, well, why should we be looking at this right now? So I want to dive into this a little bit more because I think people misunderstand this when I first talk about it. So visualize in your mind, I have three intersecting circles. And the first circle is my product. This is your product and its capabilities and what it does. The second circle is your market. And that's, are we CRM software? Are we what exactly are we? The third circle is this trend. Now, what you really want is to be right in the middle. If I get the intersection between product and market right, that's good. People sort of understand what I am. If I can layer on a relevant trend, if it's relevant to my target market, then what I've got is this kind of extra spicy bit. Like this product right now seems really cool and new and exciting. And maybe the company has an initiative around this trend, and now you kind of align with that. So that might actually help you move a deal along. So that's where we want to be. So let me give you an example of how this might work. So a bunch of years ago, I had some meetings with the folks at Redgate Software. Love you, Redgate Software. You're so great. What Redgate Software does is database tools. They have a suite of database tools. They've been very successful with this suite of database tools. They have hundreds of thousands of active users of these database tools. They're the best in the land. Everything's going great. What they noticed one year, and this was a few years back, is that when they were calling into accounts to talk about purchasing database tools, some of the accounts were saying, well, you know what? This year, we're focusing all our budget and all our energy on a DevOps transformation. And so we don't think database tools is part of that. So call us next year and you can come and sell us something next year. So needless to say, this is a problem for Redgate. So what the team did was they sat down together and they said, well, do we have a point of view on DevOps? Aren't we actually part of DevOps? And the way they looked at it was, if you weren't thinking about data in the context of your DevOps transformation, you were actually going to be in trouble. So they developed a point of view around this. They give it a name, Database DevOps. And they started talking about it. They started blogging about it. They were doing conference talks about it. They were writing content around it. And so all of a sudden, database DevOps became a thing. What happened after that was when they got this objection, like, hey, we're in the middle of a DevOps transformation. Now the reps had a whole story around it that was like, hey, you're going through a DevOps transformation. We think it's really important to think about data in the context of that. And in fact, I have a whole suite of tools to offer you that can help with that. So what we had was this thing that was kind of, a great product, well understood, positioned really well in a great market, but looping in this extra trend helped make it a little bit more spicy and a little bit more right now. The result of that was, their inbound leads increased by 100 times, and revenue's all going up to the right. Everybody's happy. So that's what it looks like when it's good. They didn't fundamentally reposition their stuff, but they looped in this trend to make it very relevant for something that their customers were really focused on right then. Now, there's lots of ways to screw this up, frankly. And so where you want to be is right at the intersection of these three circles. If you're off of there, potentially there could be some problems. So if you're off center, but you're good on product and a nice overlap with your market category, that's good. You're nicely well positioned. You're nicely understandable. You just may not be sexy this year. You might have a hard time getting press to cover you. You might not get invited to speak at the conference. But you know what? A lot of people make a lot of money selling really boring stuff. I myself was in the database market for years and years when there was nothing sexy about it. And that didn't stop us from doing hundreds of millions of revenue. So it's okay if a trend doesn't apply to you. It's perfectly fine. And you can still be very successful in the market without that. Where you have to watch yourself is if you're kind of off in one of the other interstitials. So let's say you're in the interstitial where, you've got your product and it's intersecting with the trend and you just forget about the market. So what you're trying to do is actually position yourself with the trend. What you end up with is something that it sounds kind of cool, but it's actually a little bit baffling because we're not exactly sure what you are. So an example of this, years ago, I got a call from a VC and he said, look, I've been working with this team and they've got this thing I think is really cool, but they have a hard time when they're in sales conversations with customers because customers can't quite figure it out. So I got on the call and there was 5 or 6 guys from the team on there. And I said, okay, pitch me your stuff. And they said, okay, well, what we are is the sharing economy for pets. And I was like, what does that mean, the sharing economy for pets? I don't actually know what that means. I was like, are we sharing the pets? Like, am I like, I got a dog. He's pretty small. I don't know if I can share him. And they said, no, that's not it. We're the sharing economy for pets. And it was so interesting. They had just raised some money. And so obviously this trend of the sharing economy was pivotal to them being able to raise the money. But for end users or customers, I'm not sure everybody really understood what the sharing economy really meant. So they kept saying sharing economy for pets, sharing economy for pets. And I didn't really understand what this thing was all about. And so they were getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated. Eventually, the CEO said, look, everybody else shut up. I'm going to tell this lady what we're all about. And so he leans in and he says, look, what we actually have here is Uber for cats. And I was in my office and I was like, I wonder what he thinks I think when he says that, like Uber for cats. And I had this vision in my mind of like little cats driving to Uber. Like I was like, ooh, people in Silicon Valley, they taught the cats how to drive and you call up the Uber and the little cat shows up. And anyways, I might have said that out loud. And then the guy was really mad at me and he was like, no, that's not what it is at all. And then he finally told me what it was. What it actually was a 2-sided marketplace where if you're a pet owner, you could connect to pet services like a dog groomer or a thing like that. And you could order them up on this app and then they come to your house and do that. And so that was so much more understandable at that moment. So like Uber is not a market, that's a company. So saying you're Uber for pets, like different people have different ideas what Uber is all about. It doesn't really help me position in a market. And this sharing economy for pets is a trend. It's not a market. So trying to take your product and position it around a trend, it's dangerous. And it often results in something that is actually pretty confusing. The other place where we get into trouble is where we're looking at the interstitial between the market and the trend. And we get so excited about that, we just forget to relate it back to our product. Like you wouldn't think this would happen, but this actually happens a lot. My favorite example of this is from years and years ago, but it's still the example I think of the most when I think about this. And this was, there's this company called Long Island Iced Tea. They make iced tea, like, that's it, iced tea. I don't know why, but for some reason they were listed on the NASDAQ, which never made sense to me. But anyways, the iced tea company is there. And it's right around the time when blockchain is getting really hot. And these folks were having a problem with the stock price. So the stock price was going down, iced tea business not doing so good. And so the NASDAQ was threatening to delist them off the exchange. They said, look, if you can't get the stock price up, we're going to have to take you off the exchange. So this is an existential crisis for the company. They're trying to figure out what to do. And what they did was they put out a press release and they said, we're changing the name. It's no longer Long Island Iced Tea. That's not what we are anymore. The company is now called Long Blockchain. Now, I'm in my office when this thing goes out and hits the news, and people are freaking out about it. Like, what is this thing? Like, they're in the iced tea business and now they got blockchain. And, when I was reading it, I was like, look, like that's a lame attempt to attach yourself to a trend. Like they didn't announce anything. They didn't announce new technology or what they were going to do with the blockchain or anything else. They literally just changed the name and that was it. And I was like, well, this is never going to work. That's not the way positioning works. This is bad. I was actually in the middle of writing a blog post about it. I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. And then what happened? Stock price goes up, and it doesn't go up a little, it goes up a lot. And not only does it go up, it goes up and it stays up for like a week. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, I'm full of bad advice. I've been telling people the wrong thing to do. I should just be telling people, look, like if blockchain's hot, just slap that blockchain on there. Forget about it. You don't actually have to do anything. Stock price is going to go up. But apparently, what happened was there actually was nothing there. And so the stock pickers, started calling in to long blockchain and saying, so what's the blockchain strategy, man? We got to hear about it. And they just wouldn't answer the phone over there. And so eventually the stock pickers got nervous and they sold all the stock. And the people who were, long on Long Island iced tea, they decided that maybe things are really bad over there. I don't know what's going over there, but they decided that they'll sell their stock too. And then the stock basically dropped off a cliff and then they got delisted. And I felt better about the world, to be honest, because I was a little worried there for a second, but it was too bad for the long blockchain guys. I don't know what they're doing now. I think they're still around. But that's an example. We can't get so excited about the trend in the market and let's just kind of not have it relate to our product at all. So I want to address AI very specifically here because I get so many questions about it right now. So I thought it'd be a fun thing to talk about. AI is super hot right now. And the first thing is that for most people, when you talk about AI, they think of the product ChatGPT. People call ChatGPT AI, but it's not. It's actually a natural language processing tool, or you could call it an AI-powered chatbot, if you will. But so AI is the underlying technology. ChatGPT is a chatbot, or whatever you want to call it, sitting on top of AI. So when we say AI, we're not just talking about ChatGPT here. We're actually talking about the underlying technology. We're talking about machine learning. We're talking about a lot of things. So there isn't a company that I'm talking to right now that isn't thinking about how they could potentially take advantage of AI technologies within the products that they deliver right now. These products span a lot of different markets. It's CRM, it's accounting software, it's networking software, it's almost everything right now. So for the most part, I don't see AI as a separate market in itself, although there are a handful of companies that are working on infrastructure that is very tightly tied to AI. But for the most part, AI is an enabling technology or an enabling thing that spans lots and lots of different markets, lots and lots of different kinds of solutions. If you are in the CRM market today and you add a bunch of cool AI functionality, you don't suddenly become an AI tool. You're still a CRM tool, but you are now an AI-enabled CRM tool, or you have AI in there, but your fundamental positioning is likely not going to change. So like I mentioned earlier, you may want to fool around with pulling that trend into your messaging, pulling that trend into your sales pitch and taking advantage of the hype around AI while it's happening, specifically if your customers are saying to you in sales meetings like, hey, we've got a big AI initiative around here. How do you fit into that? If you've got customers asking that, you're going to have to figure out what the answer to that question is. But that doesn't mean that you stop being a CRM or you stop being accounting software. You can't just go out and say, hey, man, we've got the AI and that's it, and not talk about the main reason why people buy you. That's not the way it's going to work. But if you can take advantage of AI in your product to deliver additional value, and your customers are very interested in AI and potentially are working on an AI strategy of their own, and you can show how your stuff fits into that, this is going to potentially help you close deals faster, particularly in the short term where there's so much hype and press and focus on AI and what does that mean for everybody. So that's it. I hope you found that useful. Hey, I got a couple little announcements. One is I'm writing a newsletter. It's brand new. It's on Substack. It's aprildunford.substack.com, or you can go aprildunford/books and you can sign up for it there. It's a bit of an experiment. I'm going to try it for 6 months and see if people like reading it or I like writing it. I've got a lot of things to say right now. So not everybody wants to do podcasts or video. So I thought, let's do some of that in written form as well. So if you want, you can sign up for that. There's a set of templates that go with that. So there's actually 2 sets of templates, and I put them together into a workbook. So there's templates that go with the first book, which is obviously awesome. And then there's a distinct set of templates that go with sales pitch. In my mind, the 2 books kind of go together. You need to have your positioning solid to have positioning as an input into your sales pitch. And so the templates kind of work through how you do that. They make the most sense if you have the books, obviously, but I think the templates are a nice add-on to the book. So if you sign up for the newsletter, then you'll get access to the templates for free. So follow along on the newsletter if you're interested in that. Lastly, again, as always, I super appreciate you listening and following along on my journey over here. This podcast is still pretty new. I would love it if you gave it a review or a rating just so that other people know what you think. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you again next week.